Hi guys, today we are reviewing a Casio F91 digital sports watch. In the review we'll go through the style, features as well as dimensions. So without further ado, let's get started. As you can see, this is one of the classic Casio watches. It's a very recognisable shape if you know anything about the early digital watches from the 80s. This is a plastic resin case. You have two pushers on one side, over this side, and you've got a single pusher over this side with a resin just block here. You have a plastic stroke resin strap, very thin, very basic and functional. We've got a black buckle with the Casio logo in it. We have quite a few adjustment points on the actual bracelet itself. And we have a screw-on stainless steel back. This tells us that the watch is water resistant, and it gives us the model number and tells us it was made in China. If we come around to the face of the watch, we've got a pretty standard style to it. It's sort of this funny sort of square octagonal edged shape, a blue mark around the edge, and then you've got black with the then Casio scripts in different colours, blues, golds, reds, whites. It tells us it's a Casio F91-W. It tells us it's an alarm chronograph. It's water resistant. Now that does only mean it's water resistant, splash proof. You can't go swimming in this watch. It's got an alarm on and off setting mode button, so you've got three control buttons on this watch, and a digital analog display which is showing us the time and the date. So this watch came out around about the early 80s, and at the time it was a marvel. There were lots of digital watches sort of around by then, but digital watches at the time were usually LED watches or quartz watches in a manual style with hands. Digital watches didn't really advance until you got the LCD watches like this one. Now the LED watches, the pulsars and like, were very expensive. They had a red LED display and it wasn't always on. You had to press a button to get the time up. So as watches, they weren't that good really. Pressing the button, it was easier like modern day today. You just pick out your phone and look at the time. Back then you had to pick up your watch, look at your watch on your wrist, press a button, oh that's the time, so you needed two hands to use it. So this is an always on display. As you can see, the display's there all the time, but it also offered more functions than just the standard other LED watches of the time. These things, as I said, these revolutionised the watch industry. And these also got kids into watches and younger adults into watches where maybe an ordinary watch with just hands and minutes was boring. This was a functional digital watch, and this is what really kicked it off in the 80s for a lot of kids, especially I know myself at school. This told the time. It has an alarm and a stopwatch, and that was the big thing about these watches. The alarm was one thing, you didn't get that on mechanical watches, especially not the cheap mechanical watches you just wound up every day. Didn't get anything like it on the LED watches, which were over £100. I mean, even now they're selling them reintroduced as like retro models, and they're very expensive and pointless because you can't see the time unless you press a button. The biggest thing on this was, as well as having that alarm with an alarm sound, and you heard the sound when I pressed the button, it was a chronograph with a stopwatch. And this was fascinating for anybody of that age from the 80s. As kids, you use this thing to play games. You press this button to start it, and it would just count up. Now, it would count to an hour. Press that to stop it, press it to reset. You also have a lap counter, so if you press the top one at a time, tells you what lap you're on, carries on. Fantastic stopwatch, very useful. But as kids, all we did was play with it. We just tried to see who could get nearest to a second. Press a button. We just sit there playing games. Until you got a person who could get bang on a second. And for a kid, something like this was absolutely fascinating. Brilliant idea. It also has a light, but to be perfectly fair, the light is pretty useless. You can sort of see the time with it, but it was never really that good. There were later, better versions with glowing backgrounds. They're still available today. You can buy watches like this. There's a lot of watches in this range, not just the F91W, but there's lots of other watches of this style. At the time when they first come out, and still today, you could buy stainless steel versions. You could buy versions with gold plating on them. There's loads of different styles and colours, even different colours on this plastic around the front. It's an iconic stylish watch. It does a job, and it's still available today. If we come to the sizes, the face of the watch is 27mm across. It's sort of an oblongy shape, as I said. With the case makes it 34mm. If you count the buttons, that makes it 37mm. The strap is an average size of about 19mm, go down a little bit from here. Thickness, they're very thin, very, very thin. This is 8mm in thickness in total, and because it's plastic, it has a stainless steel back, but it's mainly a plastic watch. Weight is very low. This only weighs 21 grams, so it's actually lighter than a Swatch, but it's got a lot more function. That size also means to me it's a very unisex watch. It's quite small for a man nowadays. At the time, I think it was teenagers in the 80s that bought these or had them bought for them. And the same goes for this one. This one, I'm going to give this to my son and just see if he can sort of relive what I lived in the 80s when you're playing with a stopwatch, because the stopwatch at the moment on a couple of my watches has fascinated him. So I thought, I'll get one of these. He can have a play with it and he can enjoy something that I think I enjoyed a lot over my time at school, secondary school. I loved having digital watches, and that's what really kicked my craze, was playing with different styles of watches with different features, and that's what started this amazing and rather silly watch collecting craze I have now. So guys, thanks for watching. Hope you liked the review. If you do, please hit the like button down below. Please think about subscribing and hitting the notification bell to be notified when I upload the next load of videos. Thanks again. Bye bye.